It's his neighbor watching porn.
I hate that. Actually, it's funny because at the end we do that fast
That's
five
it.
questions, and so it's like one of the questions that they suggested was like, "Hey, What's the
He'll be
funniest
back.
Wi-Fi name that you've had?" And my neighbor's Wi-Fi password is horsecock. So it's like, okay. Hey, everyone, welcome back to Highlights of My Mediocre Career, where I talk with comics I met in my 24 years doing stand up, kind of chat about their career, what's going on with them now. And at the end, it's kind of like an intervention. I ask them to tell me, where did I go wrong? Today's guest, I'm so happy to have him today. He is like one of the most well respected headliners working today. He's a comic, he's an actor, he has an Amazon Prime special. What's the worst that could happen? You may have seen him on Kevin Can Wait. He's been on HBO's Vinyl, and he was on an Amazon Prime show that I'm dying to talk to him about. It was filmed right around the corner from here called Red Oaks. My friend, great comic, Chris Monty. Chris, welcome.
Hey, Chip, how are you? As I said earlier off the air, it's so good to see you. I wish I could see you in person, pal. This is taking its toll on us.
Yeah, I know. It's like so, for prosperity, because when we put this tape into the Museum of Radio and Television History, Chris, when this goes in there, uh, we wanted to know that this was during week 5 or 6 in the metro area pandemic. How you make it out? Because you are always working. How you dealing with this?
Well, the good thing is I have my wife and my baby. I have a little baby,
Yeah,
so I'm
congrats on
getting
that.
it's exhausting, because it's constant. Like, we have a 10-month-old baby, and but it's wonderful too because I get to see all the little things I probably wouldn't see if I was on the road and working all the time. But it's starting to get to me. You climb the walls. I'm used to being on the road, 4 or 5 days a week, and now I've been home for 60 days, and you get a little stir crazy.
Oh yeah, because it's like when you have kids, man, it changes everything. Like I remember when I first started, and I'd be in the city, and you know, you, you're working a day job during then, and you come home and your wife has either got postpartum depression and the kid is sleeping in the room. We lived in an apartment. I remember laying on the
Right.
floor rocking the bassinet. So that you're probably going through stuff like that now, right?
Yeah, and what's more frustrating is my wife and I bought a house, and we should have closed on the house before the year ended last year, but it didn't go through. There were some issues, so we wound up closing on the house on the 16th of March. But we're still not in the house, so we're still
Oh
living in our one
God.
bedroom apartment while we had to get a lot of renovations done, and then that was paused because the guys didn't all want to work in the same confined area together. So that's almost done, that work. But like, if we were in the house, at least we would both have a place to get away from each other for a few hours a day.
That's what love's all about, Chris. That's what it's all
Yes,
about, man.
my wife's not
So
used to having me home,
yeah,
7 days a week.
yeah, I know. That's the life of a performer. But
Yeah.
so let's step back. Let's forget about the pandemic. Uh, I'm not really sure when we first met, but in my mind, the first time I remember seeing you was it was in a horrible show in the back of a uh, a kosher deli in Teaneck. Do you remember that show? It was years ago.
Was
I
that
think it
with
was.
Davin?
Yes, yes, it
Anytime you
was.
say horrible show in New Jersey, right away, why do I think of Davin Rosenblatt?
You know, that's going to kill all of those, like high level bookings that we get with side splitting productions. But anyway,
I'll
so
be honest with you. When we get back to semi-normal, though, we were talking about this yesterday. I was on a Zoom party uh, with a bunch of comics. The one-nighters will probably what comes back faster than the long engagements.
right, yeah,
You
exactly.
know?
So, but what I remember about that show is it was, and I think, you know, I think we had both just started, and
Has
um,
to be a long time ago. Then
it was a long time ago, and it was because I think it's over 20 years ago.
has to
And
be. Yeah, I'm doing this over 22 years, and you're probably doing it the same, or
yeah, about the same, yeah. And it was like in the kosher deli, and so we're doing our material, and the only guy that did really well was this kid who was like Orthodox, and he was doing
Jewish
all
kid.
this
Yep.
Jewish kid. I think his
I
name's
forget
Ian
the name
Wolf.
of the place, but
Ian
I
Wolf, I
remember
think.
that. I
Yeah.
remember that because we were sitting with Davin's wife,
Yes. Yeah.
and you and I held our own. We did okay. We didn't bomb.
Right.
But
Yeah.
because it was a real Jewish crowd, so
Right.
when the Jewish kid got up, I remember him doing really well because he had all the, it'd be like putting him in an Italian crowd. I mean, you would kill, and he'd have troubles.
Yeah. So it was funny. It's like I knew nothing about a kosher deli. Like I went in, I
Oh,
think I ordered a ham and cheese with mayo, and they're
yeah,
like,
me
"Get
too.
out of here." So,
I was
but
like,
it's
"Can I
like
get a provolone with mayonnaise?" The guy's like, "Yeah, no, we don't have that."
you really, you're out there. You took it from there to TV, film.
Well, I'll tell you how it started. A friend of mine called me from Florida. He used to be in New York, and he had quit doing stand up, and he opened up an agency. And now he's booking comics, and singers and stuff. So he had this gig where Joan Rivers was performing in Connecticut. I had to submit like 5 acts. Can I submit you? So anyway, she chose me out of the 5 people, and I went up and did it. And after that, I don't know, I'd say about a month or so, I get a phone call from her assistant, and he said, Joan Rivers at this venue. Sure, at this venue. Yeah. Then I started getting phone calls. They had called me, and when they called me, they would call me. They wouldn't call me like you call me, and you go, "Hey, Chris, I got a gig 6 months down the line.
Right.
Are you available?" Yes. Put it in the book. They would call me like 2 weeks before a gig and say, "Hey, can you open for Joan Rivers this weekend?" So I said, "Listen," I said, "Tell Joan I'm really sorry, but I'm headlining a club. It's opening weekend. Can't. She's a comic. She should understand." And so the guy said, "Okay, I'll tell her, no problem." That's something 3 months down the road, and they doubled my money.
That's cool.
So it worked out to help me.
Yeah, because I don't think you ever go wrong with being ethical in this business, right? Because you don't want to be that scumbag that leaves somebody like high and dry. Or there's actually a
Right.
famous story in Jay Leno's book about, which I don't know if it was his or if he stole it from somebody else, because some of those were stolen from other comics. But it was like he had this gig, a $50 gig, and then someone called him for a cruise gig, which was $500. He kept the $50 gig because that's what you do when you're a professional comic.
Right.
And what happened is his friend took the $500 gig, and it ended up, like it doesn't make you a bad person, but it ended up being a naked gay cruise. And so the comic was performing, and it was just like a really, really uncomfortable
Oh wow.
situation. So, but anyway,
But
so
I know guys that would cancel on you though for $50 more.
oh yeah, I've seen
We
it.
all
It's
run into those
happened.
guys, right?
It's happened. Or the guy that double books the gig, right? He's got a
Yeah.
gig here, and he's like, "Oh, it's 8. It should get over by 10, so I can make it there at 10:15."
And then he tells you, "Hey, can you put me on first?" And they go, "No, you're the big attraction. I advertised you. I can't put you on first. I got to put you on last."
Yeah, I know.
I
So
know.
what was Joan like to work with?
She was really cool. And that first night that I worked with her, here's the best thing. When you get to a Joan gig, she would so professional. Chip from the ushers to the snack bar to everything in that theater she worked. Everything had to run the way she said it was going to run. She was such a professional. So she would, about 3 hours before the show, you had to be there because she wanted to do a quick run through with everybody in the theater of how the show was going to go. And she would have me go on, and she would say, "Just say the last line of your last joke." And I'd say the last line of my last joke, and then she would tell the band, "Okay, as soon as you hear that, boom, play him off and do this, and I'm going to do this, and she would all have it set up. So we go through that, and it's the first time I met her. And now we're going in the elevator downstairs to the dressing rooms. And she's like, "Everything okay? There's food down here. If you need anything, just tell Graham," who was her assistant. "Just tell Graham if you need anything, he'll take care of you. Thank you so much, Mr. Rivers. It's a pleasure." So then I go on stage to open the show, and I had to do 25 minutes, and I'm on stage probably about 12 minutes, and it's 1,500 seats. It's the Palace Theater in Connecticut, packed, right? Beautiful theater, and I'm killing. It's the crowd. You couldn't ask for a nicer audience. I'm just doing great. And I look over to the side, and Joan Rivers is sitting there on a stool watching me perform. And then I turn back as I do a pace back the other way, and in my mind, I'm like, "Holy shit, Joan Rivers is watching me perform." And that was it. After that was the first time I worked for her, and after that, she asked me back for a couple of years until her untimely passing.
Yeah, yeah. Because I've heard
Since she died, I
stories.
haven't heard from her.
Yeah, well, that's what happens sometimes. People pass away, they forget. But
That's it.
it's like because I've heard female comics say that she was like really so nurturing and mentoring to them, and it's that's nice to hear. Tell me out some other people that you opened up with, when you were coming up, that you opened up for that you remember. Maybe some famous guys you opened up for.
Well, actually, just before this whole disaster hit, and back in December, I had a chance to open up for Julio Iglesias.
Very
So
cool.
yeah, that was really cool. I picked up 2 shows with him, and his staff was very impressed with me. And my agent, who had set it up, called me and said, "Oh, we might get more work out of this because they loved you." And they were concerned at first because it's a very his audience is mixed, but it's heavy Latino,
Right.
And they said, "Oh, they were looking for Latino comics, but they had so many over the years." That they didn't want to just keep using the same guys. So when they had me, they were a little apprehensive. Although I came highly recommended, and I did such a great job for them, they had said to the agent, "Oh no," they were really impressed. So we'll call you again. And now, obviously, nobody's calling anybody. But
Right. Yeah.
so I had worked with him. I worked with you were talking about. You wanted to ask me about Red Oaks. Just to
Yeah.
say, I worked with Paul Reiser at the same theater that I worked with Joan Rivers for the first time, up at the Palace Theater in Connecticut. I worked with Paul Reiser probably about 6 months before I got on that show, which he was on, by the way.
Right.
Red
Yeah.
Oaks.
Well, that was a great show because I'm talking to you from Rivervale, New Jersey, and I think it was filmed in in the golf courses. I forgot what the name of the golf course here, but I think they filmed it right down the street from me. That
I
the
think I think we did. I don't remember, but it wasn't far from New York, and it wasn't. It was. I think it was in Jersey. It was
right
either in
and
Jersey or Rockland County. I don't remember.
yeah, no, I'm pretty sure because they advertised that, and I'm like, and I'm watching. It was a great show. It really was a great show. Paul Reiser was in it. I think Freddie Roman was in it.
Yeah,
Um,
what's his name? His pal was the star of it, to the guy from Mad About You, Richard Kind.
Richard Kind, yeah.
Yeah.
And so and then I was watching, I'm like, God, that's Chris. I was watching and you have a scene in the
In
locker room,
the
in the locker room, isn't it?
in the locker room, right? And you know what? So it's funny. The last line of the scene, Paul Reiser, we improv that together in rehearsal. Then we put that in. He said, "I'm going to say this, and you react this way." And I said, "Okay." And it was really cool. He was really nice to me. And the sad part about that show is it got canceled after 2 seasons. But they told me after the first season ended, they called my agent and they said, "Hey, we think we want to bring Chris back to have him as a recurring guy on the show. He might not be in every episode, but he'll be in a few episodes every season." And we were like, "Oh, that's great." And then the show got canceled.
Yeah. And that was disappointing because I was watching it, and then I was waiting for a new season and there was no new season. And because it was a great show. If you haven't watched it, it's still on there. You can still see it. Like, check it out.
Right.
Um, but um, what happened is we were talking to Rob Falcone. You know Rob, right?
Oh, I love Rob.
Yeah, so we were talking to Rob, and Rob has that bit that he does in his act about The Sopranos where he does the one line, right?
Right.
Um, and so he had the same experience because sometimes the arc of the show changes, right? So they
Right.
were calling for him to come back, and then all of a sudden, AJ from The Sopranos went from working at the construction site to his dad making him manage a pizza parlor, and then all of a sudden, Rob's next next
Right.
year work is gone. So it's kind of tough.
He's
But
had a lot of gigs, though. I mean, he's been pretty lucky. I mean, if you look at his resume, he's done a lot of shows, Rob.
oh yeah, oh yeah, we were talking to him about that. Well, talking about that, it's like so vinyl, HBO, right? I saw your scene of that. Tell me about that. Vinyl was about the record
That's
industry
another
business,
one.
right? Yeah.
I go for the audition. I didn't even audition for the part I got. I auditioned for a different role, and the director and the producers liked me, and they said to my agent, "Oh, would Chris come back and read for a different guy?" And they said, of course I said, "Yeah, I'll read for anybody." So I went back, and then it was a nice, juicy, chunky scene, and then they in the script, my character was listed as a recurring. So at that time I think I was dating my wife at the time. We weren't married yet. And I said, oh, this is amazing because if I get on the show, it's not only on HBO, but it's produced by Mick Jagger and Scorsese. And I
Right.
go, this could open up the door. I can be a regular on the show, and who knows, maybe I can be in a Scorsese film one day. Anyway, same thing happened with Rob. The experience was amazing. The cast and crew and everybody at HBO was just phenomenal. It was like you go and you do a couple of days, where you go in for wardrobe and then you go in for a rehearsal and you do a reading and then you shoot. So you work in 3-4 days, and when it's all over, you're depressed. You're like, I just want to do this every day. I want to get up every day and come to work. But the same thing happened at Falcone. They tied me into a guy on the show that they didn't really write a storyline around. They wrote the storyline around Bobby Cannavale and Ray Romano, and they didn't. Their other partner, the guy, I think his name was J.C. McKenzie, the actor. I was connected to him, and when they weren't writing a storyline around him, that's why I didn't get any more than the one episode. He only really had the one episode that he really had. He was in that whole episode, but it was a phenomenal experience. And they canceled that show too. I think I'm a jinx, Chip.
No, man. And you just keep going from one thing to another, which is great. It's like, but what's it like? You're a comic, then you start being on these shows. Like it's Martin Scorsese you're talking about, Mick Jagger you're talking about. Like, what does that feel like?
I didn't get to meet them. They weren't on the shoot, but it's I wish they were, but yeah, it's big time production. It's big time production. And that day, I never forget that day we shot, because we shot in July. It was July 8th that we shot in, I think, 2014 or 2015. And I'm wearing corduroy pants with a flannel shirt and a leather vest and that wig and the mustache. It was 96 degrees that day.
Wow.
And we had to shut off the air conditioners when we shot because they were too loud. So I'm in a big warehouse that's baking in the sun in that outfit. So it was brutal, but I would do it every day.
Yeah, it's just so cool. And then, did you take acting lessons?
I took acting lessons years ago with the infamous Joanna Bexon, New York City.
Okay.
Joanna's famous for teaching Ray Romano, Kevin James, Dave Attell, so many names. Kim Cattrall from Sex and the City. She's the best. If anybody's out there and they're in the tri-state area and they're looking to take acting lessons when everything gets back to normal, look up Joanna Bexon. She's the best.
So, like, what's the one tip that, like, Joanna gave you that you really took to heart, that really helped you as an actor?
Listen. That's the thing. The main thing is listening. So, like, when you're in a scene with somebody, you got it. You don't want to get caught acting. You want to keep it real. Like, you and I are having a conversation right now. You want to make everything look real and feel real. So listen to what the other person's saying to you and react naturally as you would react if that person really said those words to you. So that's one of the main things you get as an actor, is you have to learn to listen.
Okay. So you mentioned Kevin James. Now, you were on Kevin's Can Wait, and I saw the episode. Was your character like Dynamic Dave? Was that the guy's name?
Dynamic Bob.
Dynamic Bob. So tell me about because Kevin James seems like a great guy. He's also from Long Island, right?
I'm sorry. What? Yes, I'm sorry.
No worries.
I'm taping this while my wife's
That's
and
okay.
The baby.
That's okay.
She asked me a baby question.
You're doing me the favor, Chris. So Kevin James, right?
Yes.
He's a Long Island guy, right? Is he a Long Island guy?
Yep. He's from Stony Brook, Long Island.
Okay. So what was it like working on that show? That sounded like a fun set, right?
That was great too. That was another show. When the week ended, I was sad that it ended. Everybody from the security guard that let you in the building to the makeup people, the director, Andy Frick, everybody in the cast and the crew just couldn't be nicer. It was a very positive vibe, like as was the HBO show. Everybody was nice. Everybody was happy to be working. There was no dicks on the set. There was no attitude on the set. It was really cool. Food galore. Like, there was a snack room, and then that wasn't even the lunchroom, but just the snack room. Chip, you can eat all day and be full. And then all of a sudden lunch came, and it was like, craft services serving, roast beef and hot turkey and, spaghetti and meatballs. And it was just so good. It was really fun. It was really fun, and it was close to home. It was about 30 minutes away from where I live, so not better than that.
You
You
can't
know,
beat that. You can't
same
beat
thing
that.
with vinyl. Vinyl was even closer because I live in Queens, and vinyl was in Brooklyn, and taping vinyl was about 10-minute drive.
Well, so you tell your agent like, I'm only going to act in a radius of like 30 miles from my house. That's it. Anything else, I'm not going to take. You know.
Dude, I'll go to Bora Bora if they call me tomorrow.
So, like, now you've been doing this a long time, like we said. So, off the top of your head, you know, even if it's a long time ago, tell me about the worst gig you ever had and the best gig you ever had.
Let's see. I told this story yesterday on the Zoom party. It's worth repeating. I guess it was probably in the beginning of my career, the late '90s, and I don't know if you know Peter Bales.
Yep, yep, yep.
So Peter Bales used to run a room on Long Island, in Huntington, Long Island. He used to run a room on Wednesday night. The show didn't start till 11 p.m., but it was a very college bar, a lot of college kids. So 11 p.m. on a Wednesday night, it was no problem. Like it was packed. The place would be packed for the show. And I think it was 1999 or 1998, and the Yankees just won the World Series. So we walk into the show. We get there around 10. The show's supposed to start at 11. We get there. We used to get there around 10. All the comics, have a beer, hang out, get some wings, and the Yankees. The game's wrapping up. It's like 11:15, and the Yankees are. It's almost over. The Yankees are about to win it, and we look at Peter and we're like, yeah, we're not doing a show tonight, right? We're just, he goes, no, we're doing a show. We're like, nobody's going to want to watch a show. They're all these people who've been here since 7 o'clock. They're watching the World Series. They're drunk. They're not here for the show. They're here and they're going to want to watch the post game. Who doesn't want to watch the celebration after your team wins the World Series? No, that's fine. We're going to have them shut the TVs off. Well, they shut the TVs off, and everybody's, what the fuck? Who shut the TV off? Right? There are all these drunk people. And Peter Bales gets on and he's like, hey, how are you, everybody? It's time for comedy. And he bombs for like 20 minutes. And then he brings me up first. And I'm up there and bomb. I mean, I'm up there like 3 minutes and it feels like an eternity. And there's just no laughter. And I hear some guy at the bar say, I'll buy you a drink if you get off now. And I said, thank you, good night. And I went to the bar and he bought me a drink.
And those are the things that you never forget. I remember a guy asking me to do a roast. And they always think, oh, it's the last minute and you can just come up with this crap,
Right.
For this. So he asked me a month ago. I never got anything on the guy. And I was doing it for the guy who was my best man at the wedding, his brother, who was running for freaking office or something. So anyway, it was a coach in the town. Long story short, I don't get anything on the guy. 2 days before, they hand me like 3 notes on the guy. I said, I can do it, but I need a podium. And so I can put notes on it. And other guys have to be roasting them. Yeah. You go in. Nobody else is roasting them. No podium. No nothing. So I brought a comic to open up for me. And he went up. It's 300 drunken cops and firemen.
Oh, they're the worst.
They're the worst. And so after a beefsteak, and the guy's supposed to do 30 minutes in front of me, he does 8 and bails out. And then before I go up, the one thing I learned was, I said to the guy, give me my money. Put my money in my hand here before I go up on stage. Gives me the money. I go up. It's just horrible. And like you said, the guy said, buy me a drink and I'll get off. I remember one cop screaming in my face saying, call 911 because you're killing me. And it sucks when the guy in the audience has the best line,
Has the best line of the night.
Right. So tell me.
I'll give you one more real quick.
Yeah, please.
So I get hired to do I think it's a 50th wedding anniversary. So I actually do a bunch of fire. It's not a firehouse. It was a bunch of firemen, and it was like a cigar night. And the guy hires me and he goes, hey, you want to do like a half-hour comedy cigar night? So I go and I do it. It wasn't easy because it was all men, but I did okay. I did all dirty jokes. I did a lot of insults, whatever. So one of the guys comes to me after the gig and he goes, my parents are celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. They're from Ireland. I would love to have you do a half an hour at the party. So I go, listen, I'll do it, but you have to make sure that everybody in the crowd knows there's going to be a comedian because there's nothing worse than surprising people with comedy. Well, I get to the gig and it's a Sunday afternoon. It's at this nice, beautiful, hotel, and they have a beautiful restaurant in there. It's huge. It's 200 people in a catering hall, and I get there, and everybody's coming up to me going, "You got to make fun of Uncle Nell. I mean, Aunt Nell. Aunt Nell wears knickers, and Aunt Nell, all this Irish stuff. Aunt Nell does this, does that." And I told everybody, I go, "Listen, why don't you get up there before I go on, and you roast Aunt Nell? Because I tell you, nobody wants to hear a stranger start making fun of some 80-year-old woman. No, you don't understand. It's going to be hysterical." So I go, okay. So I open up my show, and I say congratulations to the couple. I introduce myself, and then the first couple of jokes I do, the jokes that the kids told me to say about Aunt Nell. Man, you want to hear bomb? I'm surprised you couldn't see the mushroom cloud from friggin' New Jersey. Some guy stands up. Who the hell's this guy making fun of Aunt Nell? And I'm like, I look right over and all the kids that told me to do it now are like this, covering their faces, turning away. So then I wind up going into my act, which was the next 20 minutes of pulling everything out of my ass to try and make this right. And the couple who was being celebrated is even looking at me like, who the hell is this guy? And why is he talking? So it was awful.
Yeah. And you never forget those, man.
You don't forget those.
Gig? Best gig. I know you've had a
best
lot of great
gig?
Gigs. Best gig.
Other than some of the nights with Joan Rivers, Paul Reiser, I worked with him. That was great. Let me think. I did. I don't know if this is one of my best gigs, but it's a memorable gig, and it was the same kind of situation. I get hired to do a lobster night. This guy has a Christmas party up at Staten Island, and he has a lobster night. It's a men's club, so there's like 80 guys, ranging from 24 years old to 84 years old in the room. And he does, full steamed lobsters, prime rib, the whole bit, full bar, top shelf liquor. It's a beautiful catering hall up in Staten Island. And I walk in and I go, oh, this is going to suck. It's all men, and I was supposed to do an hour, and which is brutal as it is. At least, if you're doing an hour and there's men and women, the men are behaving. I find when the women aren't there, the men don't behave, and they want Phil. But I go in and I do this hour, and it was like the easiest hour I've ever done. They were so good, and I got a standing ovation at the end of the hour. And I was just like, it's one of those gigs that when you walk out, you're not only like, whoosh, but you're like, wow, like I didn't expect them to be that nice. You know what I mean? I thought they were going to be a bunch of,
Yeah.
Because I've done those cigar nights, all men, and it's brutal.
Because they used to do them at these places, J.B. Winberry's around here. I don't know if you ever did those, because I did one with Jim Norton there. And it's like, guys, I'm asthmatic, so it's like performing like in a humidor, and you're there. and it's just like, because guys amongst themselves, you cannot leave guys to their own accord, because women kind of mellow them out a little bit. But anyway, yeah. So, one of the things I remember when you first started, we're talking about that gig in that hideous kosher restaurant, because I like to relive the pain over and over again. But the thing is, I remember, you were dressed with like a, regular shirt, Dockers. Now you have your own style, man. You are like, it's like going back to the Rat Pack. You are there, you come on, and it really is like a put together kind of persona. So when did you come up with that? When were you doing that?
It's kind of like my real persona. Like I was always like that as a kid. I always, liked that era. Anything pre now. Like when you got to maybe from the mid '60s back, when men always wore suits and hats, and there was that style. And growing up as an Italian kid, that Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, all these guys, Tony Bennett, all these guys your parents listened to. They were always sharp looking dudes, And so I was doing a show one night, and I had to wear a suit, and I wore a suit. This is early on, and then somebody said, "You look good. You should perform like that." So then I started performing like that. In the beginning, I used to just wear like slacks with a shirt and a tie, and then I just decided let me spruce it up. And then my best friend, who became my manager, said to me, "Always wear the suit. That should be your signature, and people will expect it, and they'll it's a persona, and they'll like it." And so now I stuck with it no matter where. I try to. I mean, I dress down a little bit if I'm going to a firehouse or something,
Right.
but I still wear a sport coat, and jeans and look dressed. But for the most part, it's just I don't know, that and a cocktail. That's my
Yeah.
signature.
Yeah. I remember you did a gig for me, which of course you crushed. You killed. Everybody loved you, and I know you like to have little Jack Daniels, like either after the show or maybe like a little bit before you go on
Before,
stage.
after, and during.
Right. And so I bought you a little bottle of JD
Yes, you
because
did.
it was, and the thing is, but you brought your own, which was kind of
Because you
nice.
never know. I've gone into gigs and they go, "Oh, there's no bar," and I go, "All right, well, that's why I got a bottle in the car."
Yeah, yeah. So
But I remember we did that good gig for you up in New York a couple of years ago.
yeah,
That benefit.
yeah, and that was it. And they loved you, and it was like, it was
I
just,
never forget because one of your I don't know if you're friends with him or he's a nemesis of yours, but Jack Hoffman was at the show,
oh yeah, Jack was there. Yeah, Jack
and then
loves
he
you.
hired me to do his restaurant gig a little bit after that.
Yeah, in Japan, the 76 House, which is the oldest continually running restaurant in New York. It's been actually in operation since 1776. You know.
And I hope they're doing takeout and stuff. I hope they're still doing business.
Yeah, I think they are. I think they are. So we got about like 5-10 minutes left, Chris. So tell me about your Amazon Prime special. Like, what's the worst that could happen?
So we taped it in 2017, actually. So
Okay.
it's 3 years old now. But we shot it at the Madison Theater in Rockville Center, Long Island. Beautiful theater, 500 seats. We weren't at capacity that night. We were at I think the number was 460, which is still great. Wonderful crowd, and I put the special together and we shopped it around to. Originally, we were going to try and shoot for Netflix and the big dogs, but it's tough. It's
Yeah.
tough to get them. So Amazon Prime said, sure, we love self-produced stuff. If it's good, you send it to us. If we approve it, we'll put it up. So we sent it to them, and they said, yeah, we'll put it up. And it's been really good for me. I mean, it's gotten me a lot of jobs. It's gotten me a lot of heat, and it was just a fantastic experience. It was basically I did that show, Chip, and then when I finished that show, I almost did like a Seinfeld thing. I said, all right, I'm not going to repeat that material now. I'm going to move on from it because people are going to watch that, and I want them
Right.
to come and see me do different stuff.
Right. And that's
So,
what people that don't do this don't understand, because when a comic does a special like that, you kind of burn that material, right? So then
right.
you gotta write more. Yeah.
Every now and then I'll pull stuff out of it and I'll still do it, but it's not. At least when you see my show, I'm not doing that whole set. I'm doing maybe one joke or two jokes from it.
Yeah.
Because you know how it is. I know guys that do this as long as you and I are longer, and they're still doing the same act from 1987.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like they used to say, like, one of the things that, like, when I teach a class, I say, somebody told me, like, you're a poet when you're 20 because you're 20. You're a poet when you're 40 because you're a poet. So this is the same thing as a comic, like a comedian. If I see somebody doing the same act for 20 years, I say to myself, you got to write. I think Louis C.K. said, I did the same shitty act for 15 years. And then it kind of changed to,
Right.
to the Louis C.K. that became famous. But so, Chris, I'm going to close with this thing where I ask you 5 fast questions, okay? Um,
Okay.
and I just want you to answer off the top of your head, okay?
Like Fast Money on Family Feud.
Like Fast Money on Family Feud, okay? But the thing is, like, okay, so what do you think about on your way, driving in the car on your way to a gig?
I unwind, man. I think about the show, how it's going to go. I try to put my day behind me. Like I miss that. I told my wife, there's so many things that I took for granted. I used to sometimes hate, oh man, I got to do that drive to Jersey. It's Friday. I got to leave early. Now I miss that because it's my I put on music, Sinatra, something like that, jazz, and unwind. Think about a little bit of the material I'm going to do, but just pretty much blank and just like meditate.
Okay. So we talked about kind of your persona as like kind of like the old Rat Pack thing. If you're going to put together a Rat Pack now, who'd be in your Rat Pack?
Oh, well, it would definitely have to be the infamous Mr. Joe Starr from
Okay.
Long Island, who's one of my fellow Rat Packers. A good friend of mine, he's a variety performer. He'd be our white Sammy Davis. Ray grins because he can sing, he juggles, he's a comedian, he does all different things. His name is Ray Grins. I was just speaking with him this morning. That would be the top three. I guess I'd have to search for my Shirley MacLaine for
Right.
my female. And I don't know who would be. Those would be the three main guys: me, Joe, and Ray. And I'd
Right.
have to really think about if I was going to add on, the Peter Lawford, Shirley MacLaine people. I'd have to think about that.
Yeah, nobody wants to be Joey Bishop because everybody, like, anytime you talk to Joey Bishop, everybody's like, every story you hear about Joey Bishop is like he was just a pain in the ass, and no one
Yeah,
liked Joey Bishop. I don't know
except Frank
why.
Sinatra. Frank Sinatra
Frank,
loved him.
Frank's well, so that's all that mattered, right? That's all.
Yeah.
Frank liked you. That's all that mattered. So tell me about the worst hack line you've ever heard or used.
Oh, used. I don't know if it's the one I've ever heard, but I've definitely used when somebody drops, like a waitress drops a tray or a bunch of glasses. I use the old stock line. I hear a job opening,
Okay,
and you know
that's a
what?
good.
As hacky as it is, it works every time.
Yeah, I have actually never heard that, so now I'll be stealing that and using that
Oh, it's an
in
old
my
that goes
act.
back to
Right.
the comedy boom days.
So, if you were going to start a conspiracy, like what conspiracy would you like to start?
If I was going to start a conspiracy,
Yeah,
that's a tough question, man.
this
I
is a
don't
tough
know.
show. I'm not going to throw softballs up for you, Chris. You're a pro. You know what to do.
If I was going to start a conspiracy, the conspiracy. That's a good question. I should have prepped me on that. I would have came up with 7 of them for you. I know that the COVID-19 pandemic was only invented to weed out the weak comics.
Okay, all right.
And when it all comes back, the club owners that survive are just going to use the ones they always like.
Wow, I like that. That's pretty good. So,
The pros, the Chip
yeah.
Ambrosios.
Oh, yeah, right. So when the 12 people that watch this podcast see this, this is going to start a whole thing in the comedy industry. All right. So, what was I going to say? You're a Met fan, aren't you?
Yes, unfortunately.
Me too. So, most painful Met loss that you can remember?
Um, I have to say, as of right now, I would say even more so than the 2015 World Series. I would say Game 7 of the NLCS in 2006. Andy Chavez makes that big catch,
Yeah.
and the Mets. You think they're coming back, and they lose that game, and I thought they would have beat the Detroit Tigers in the World Series that year.
Yeah. Beltran
Um,
with the bat on his shoulder, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Cliff Brown. Right, no, not Cliff Brown.
Floyd.
What's
Floyd.
Cliff Floyd coming up for that pinch hit and striking out. I don't know, man. I think that in most recent memory, I would say that one. What about
Yeah.
you?
Oh, that one. And the one when they got down 3-1 to Atlanta, and they came back, and it was 3-2, and they were ahead, and they bring in Benitez, and the Braves
Yep.
tie it, and then Kenny
Kenny
Rogers
Rogers walks in.
walks in
Yep.
the run. Kenny Rogers
That
walks
would
in the
be
run.
my second one. Or 1A. That would be 1A.
Yeah, yeah. So that was painful. So I'm glad we could relive that together. That's nice. So now we're
Thank
going to
you.
sit around in the pandemic and think about that, which is
And
going
I'm
to be
watching old games. They're showing the best
Oh, I
5
know.
games all week long. I'm taping them.
That's the only reason. That's why I love watching it because I know they're going to win, and that's the great thing to be a
Right.
Met fan is know they're going to win. All right, so here's the therapy portion of the show before we close. It's like, so I'm trying to use this as kind of a little intervention for myself. So I want you to tell me we've worked together. Like, where did I go wrong? Give me some advice. Where did I go wrong, Chris?
Oh, you didn't go wrong. You're a great guy. You put together fantastic benefits. This right here is therapy enough for me. I've been doing shows like this, and anybody that asks me to do them, believe me, I miss. You know what it is? You appreciate more now. That's what this is going to teach us. Appreciate more now. Your friends. I told my wife, I said, I miss my family, but I miss my show business family. And you're
Yeah.
part of my show business family. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
Um,
thanks, Chris.
so you do everything right. I mean, you put together some great. I think the last time I worked with you was not that was like last year. We did some benefit
Yeah.
in some
Yeah.
school or something.
Yeah.
Did we do it up where the pandemic was the worst? Wasn't it in New
Yeah,
Rochelle or something?
it was in Rockland County. It was in Rockland County, and
Rockland, yeah.
and then they had the big Hasidic population up there, and it was some kind of measles outbreak or something was going on then or something.
Yes,
Yeah,
measles.
measles
I
outbreak.
remember that.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than booking shitty venues, you do a great job.
Well, before we go, Chris, tell people, where they can find you, what's going on next with you. And I know with the pandemic, it's kind of hard, but your website, where they can see you.
They could see me at my living room.
Okay.
Um, no, I actually have a sketch comedy series that's running right now online with my friend Rich Walker.
Yeah.
We did this. We did these sketches. Each episode is about 3 minutes long, and it's 3 sketches. And if you go to MontyWalkerProductions.com, that's Monty, MontyWalkerProductions.com, you could subscribe and you'll get an email every week when a new episode's coming out. And you can watch the 3 episodes that we have that have aired already at MontyWalkerProductions.com. Other than that, ChrisMontyLive.com. There's nothing really going on. Everything says canceled,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
know.
on the schedule. And we were supposed to work together, I think this Sunday, right?
Yeah. By the way, that show's canceled. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah.
Should have let that know. The
Wait,
guy was like holding out
Chip,
to the very end.
are they sending us half the pay?
Oh yeah, right. That's gonna happen. Yeah. I got people calling me back for their deposits now, and I don't know what I'm gonna do about that. But anyway. So.
Oh, listen, I had a gig I was supposed to do in a couple of weeks in May, and they sent me the money.
Oh.
And then everything hit the fan. I haven't made the money, and I used the money to pay the bills. And they called me yesterday, and they go, "Can you send us back the money?" And I'm like, "Oh shit! I'm waiting for my unemployment checks to come in."
Yeah, I know. Well, here's the better days, Chris. Thank you so much for doing this show. You're a real gentleman and a great comic. Anyone out there, you want a pro's pro, you reach out to Chris. So
thank you. Thanks
best
for
of
having me,
luck,
man.
my
I miss
friend.
you,
Yeah.
and I appreciate you having me, man. I really do. Anything you need, man, you just give me a call.
All right. Thanks, guys. Come back next week, every week, for highlights of my miserable career for great comics like Chris Monty.